Scary Alvarez is back. Before we get started this afternoon, evening, morning, whenever you happen to be watching this, shoot old Scary a like and a subscription. So today's topic is another football-related question, and I think it's a good one. When I ask if Wisconsin football could be underrated right now, and I'll go a step further, they could be underrated, for the most underrated that we have been as a program since probably 1993, in advance of that season. I know 93 went very well, a 10-1-1 record, a number of signature victories, a Rose Bowl title, the first in school history. Very good stuff. Some of the greatest vibes that any of us can remember being Wisconsin sports fans. But what was not sure is heading into that season that any of that was going to happen. I think people felt that Wisconsin was on stable-ish ground after a pair of 5-win seasons. It was not a disaster program anymore. It was a program that could upset good teams like Ohio State. But was it the kind of program that could win a Big Ten title? I'm going to tell you guys, I don't think there were many people who thought so in, let's say, May of 1993. Wisconsin had a horrific schedule, or what it appeared to be a horrific schedule. Not the hardest preseason schedule, but they played the big boys. Ohio State, Michigan State. The Big Ten was not, in my opinion, nearly as loaded as it is in 2025. But for that day and that age, you had some rough ones on your schedule, and there weren't a lot of people who were squawking about Big Ten championships in 1993 until they were. I don't think it's a spoiler alert needed. Wisconsin went on to win that title. Had some magic in Pasadena on January 1st over the UCLA Bruins, and the rest was history. What I want to do right now, and be very careful about it, very clear about it, I am not comparing anything really about the 2025 Wisconsin football team with that of the 1993 team. Beyond the fact that they were underrated, I think, in 1993. Obviously, they certainly were underrated in 1993, and I think they're underrated in 2025. I can't think of too many Wisconsin teams that were severely underrated in the last 30 years. Yes, there were a team in 98 and a team in 99 that maybe people didn't think they were going to be a Rose Bowl champion, but those weren't teams that people thought were going to have losing records. Those weren't teams that were being picked to finish 14th. Well, of course, there weren't 18 teams in the Big Ten at that point, but to finish at the very bottom of the league. Teams that are getting just a smorgasbord of disrespect from the bottom feeder type media things, social media, to the top, or what many consider the top of ESPN. ESPN came out. One of their writers, one of their decent writers. I mean, I've heard of the gentleman before. I don't think this was some thing they outsourced to a goofball. And he came out with his off-season rankings. Now this didn't necessarily mean this was how this individual was going to list the league standings for this fall, but he ranked 18 Big Ten teams on how good their offseason was, and I presume that is relative to themselves. Certainly Ohio State is almost always going to have a better offseason than Wisconsin, but Wisconsin, in this gentleman's estimation, was the 16th best, or the corollary, the third worst offseason of any Big Ten team. So without getting into a point-by-point deforestation of the arguments made by this individual, who I think is way off and tip their hand that they really know what they're talking about, things like Tubby Walker, huge loss for Wisconsin's running room, Their leading rusher, Toby Walker. Most fans didn't even know he had eligibility left. Luke Fickell was not trying to retain Walker. There was no issue there. We have a bunch of young bucks ready to pounce right now. And while he, I think, ran competently for good portions of last season, and I wish him nothing but the best in his next stop, this wasn't a big loss for Wisconsin's offense. In some ways, it'd be like saying Braden Locke was a big loss or Tanner Koziel was a big loss. I don't think they were. I don't think they were at all. But what this is a data point into what is coalescing as a mindset that Wisconsin stinks. They're going to be bad this year, and not just because they have a tough schedule. I think people understand there's a very difficult schedule. I myself have gone into great detail as to how tough that schedule is. I think it feels more than that. Wisconsin could have a relatively easy schedule this season. I think many or most of the same things would be swirling around them. This is a program that used to be good, and now they're not. And let's pile on. I'm sure others, Nebraska's gone through this. There have been ups and downs, not to compare us to Michigan, but Michigan has had periods where they've been down and people loved piling on them. Ohio State had a 500 season one year. Don't look who the coach was. And people loved piling on them. Is Ohio State in decline? So it's Wisconsin's turn, guys. A incredibly consistent and steady winner with, bowl game streak going back to 2021. 2001 was the last year they had not made a bowl game before this past season. A number of Big Ten championships, a number of major bowl wins, number of top 10 finishes. They were protected a little bit by being in the Big Ten West for a while there. But what cannot be denied is Wisconsin was a very good football program for about 30 years. Very good. Not elite. I don't think you can make the argument they were elite. They had some seasons that were elite or close to it. But it was a very good football program. Icily consistent. Okay, it didn't mean you couldn't go from 12 wins one year and 8 wins the next. Certainly, you could do that. But the joke I used to make was Phil Steele, one of the kind of venerable football minds. He would always have Wisconsin at number 18 preseason every year for like 30 straight years. That was, it's a joke, but it's also a kind of a testament to the consistency of Wisconsin, that they were not going to often challenge for the national title, but they were going to be solid every year. We've lost that. Okay, I don't think there's any question we lost that. Yes, we were only 1 year removed from a bowl game. That's not. Most programs would not consider that to be the pit of despair. But for Wisconsin fans who had, as recently as 2019, been deriding their coach, a coach who had 3 major bowl games, 3 New Year's Six bowl games in a 4-year span, the question was, can Wisconsin win the big one? We don't care about Rose Bowls. We care about college football playoff championships. And in a vacuum, I like the fact that fans want more and want to win at a higher level. That's okay. But it is a little bit funny just a few years later to look back at how delusional that was. I mean, to get back to a point where Wisconsin was playing consistently in major bowl games would be incredible right now. And I think the average fan would take it in a heartbeat. Okay. Anyway, so I'm just kind of setting the scene right now. I'm not saying this is universal. I'm not saying that everyone thinks Wisconsin has had the 16th best off season out of 18 Big Ten teams, or that Wisconsin's going to finish at the bottom of the Big Ten. They're going to miss out on bowl games. Not everyone thinks that, but it is a sexy look right now. Okay, I don't think it's any conspiracy against Wisconsin. I think they smell blood in the water, though. This strong, very capable program who's been, for lack of a better term, kind of shitting on teams in the middle and its rivals for so many years, now kind of finds itself at the other end of that sewer line, other end of that toilet. It's getting weird. And I think a lot of people would be, in the Midwest especially, would be real happy to see Wisconsin continue to fall off and have a terrible season in 2025. And the fact that, as I've told you before, Wisconsin has what appears to be a near consensus top 10 most difficult schedule, certainly the hardest in the Big Ten. Things can change during season, but that's the best we can do preseason is guess. I don't know, guys. It could be a tough year. So, getting back to my initial premise, is Wisconsin underrated? I don't know. No, I can't answer that for the same reasons that people say, "Oh, don't do football podcasts in May." I don't know if Wisconsin is underrated, but I think Wisconsin could make a case that they've been written off and disregarded and thrown in a scrap heap way too soon with some really, really good players on that team. And a coach, whatever you want to say about his last couple of years in Madison, who has proven that he can do it at a high level. The Luke Fickell can't coach club, I just don't understand that. It does not make sense, and the data does not support it. The Luke Fickell made a grievous error in one of his main coaching positions by hiring Phil Longo, and had otherworldly bad luck with keeping his starting quarterbacks healthy. You got those two. Those are for sure. But as bad as and as uninspired as Wisconsin has been the last couple of years, no rational, intelligent person who thinks that Tanner Mordecai and Alex Van Dyke, if they had been healthy all season those years, that Wisconsin wouldn't have been a 7-8 win team both seasons. I think it would have been. So instead of talking about Fickell getting fired, we're talking about, well, can Fickell take the next step? He had some time to do Chris stuff. He only won 7 or 8 games. I mean, that's Minnesota-like. And it'd be a little different discussion, but it wouldn't be, should he be fired? Or is the program in steep decline? Because it would not have been evidence of such. Okay, so why do I think that Wisconsin might be underrated right now? Part of it stems from kind of what I just mentioned. How bad Wisconsin was the last couple of years, it was kind of a razor's edge there between them being bad and them being kind of good. It wasn't a huge gulf between those two things happening. So it's not like they went into the majority of their games last season and absolutely sucked and were fortunate to have won 5 games. I don't think that's true. I think they had a couple. They probably should have won more than 5 games. And yes, they did have some games that they were never in, quote unquote, in. Iowa comes to mind. Minnesota comes to mind. When they're beaten down and unhealthy at the end of the season. Maybe the buy-in wasn't there. And that's on Fickell too. But I just think that how bad Wisconsin is, talent-wise and coaching-wise, has been unfairly amplified to a level that does not accurately reflect what the results have been or what would be expected to be on the field. Does that mean they're going to have a good season this year? Does that mean they couldn't lose 7 or 8 games? No, it doesn't mean that at all. It's a hell of a schedule. It's very difficult. There's still wait and see with how Grimes is going to do against actual teams in actual games. Or something remains to be seen with how Tressel, has he made the adjustments he's needed from a personnel and scheme perspective to be a better defense in 2025, because he sure as hell is going to need to be. You will remember, I would have been okay with jettisoning from Tressel based on what I've seen the last years, even though he had some bad luck and things like, people had underperformed and such, but there were some scheme issues, I thought. But he's reloaded and gotten bigger, gotten faster. There's legitimate, tangible reasons to believe that Wisconsin defense will be better in 2025. Will it be enough to slow down Oregon and Eugene? Don't know. So, the great unknown is always kind of an enemy of good predictions. But what I am simply saying is Wisconsin is being far too easily cast aside right now as a program, both in the macro sense and as a program in the micro sense, looking at the 2025 season. They're an afterthought. They're a fun prediction to have a terrible season. People are waiting for us to fail. My point is simply that this very well could be the most underrated Wisconsin team since 1993. I don't think this team is going to be. I don't think this team is going to be in a college football playoff or a Rose Bowl, or is going to have a one-loss season. I want to be extra clear here. That's not what I'm saying. I think the expectations for Wisconsin in 1993 were higher than they are for this team in terms of what people are predicting them to do. And it wasn't exactly a high ceiling then. But there's enough mystery and uncertainty and let them play the games kind of mushing about in all this that make me take a pause here and say maybe this team could be better than we think it is, better than the pundits think it is. I don't think this is a number 15 program in the Big Ten as far as how it's reloaded or how it will finish. I don't think so. Go better than that. I think Luke Fickell's better than that. I think these kids in the room are better than that. These discussions about Wisconsin, what they did or did not do in the offseason by these pundits, these experts that want to throw us in the trash heap. They didn't mention getting the starting cornerbacks back, one of which was a third-team All-American in 2023. Another Neisner Forkerine is very good. Not even mentioned. How many Big Ten teams are the 18 were 2-2 really good corners? Just a question of not doing your homework. That's all it was. We're talking about losing Tawi Walker. We're not talking about keeping Ricardo Holman. So again, a lot of this is just because these people haven't drilled down enough, because they are not robust enough in their research, and that's okay, because again, none of this wins games or loses games on the field. It's punditry. Gets clicks. Clearly, it's gotten mine. Gotten yours probably too. But I think for three main reasons, I'm going to go into real quick here. Wisconsin's has a very good chance to surprise people and come out looking like one of the most underrated teams going into the preseason relative to what they accomplished. I think we have stabilized and solidified, with the caveat that we got to keep the quarterback healthy. The offense. No, it's not going to be prime Jonathan Taylor, prime Ron Dane, run over anyone if they try and stop you kind of offense. But it's getting back to some of the fundamentals that made Wisconsin good. Strong OL play, good backs, a depth of running backs that can hurt you, enough talent on the wide receiving position to keep things interesting and maybe back some of those linebackers and safeties off the line. And some you had quality play caller. I mean, we could talk all we want about can Grimes do it, can Grimes not do it. It's had some ups and downs. But as I keep saying, you are not a Bryles Award finalist 2 times in 4 seasons. If you suck at what you do, it doesn't happen. You do not get lucky twice. He's a very highly regarded, intelligent play caller who doesn't mind smashing it down people's throats, but knows how to do a little bit of soft touch too. And they have, Guyton and what he does as a quarterbacks coach is going to matter. There's all kinds of factors have to come into play here. But I think that's going to be a big jump. I think the defensive front 7 is going to be much, much better. It's certainly bigger. Speed has been added. And yeah, it doesn't have to be much better to be better, because it sucked in 2024. But that's going to be, I think, a very, very impressive move up for the Wisconsin Badgers. And third, it's not going to be a position, because I think there are other positions like running back and corner where I think there's going to be a very strong product put out there on the field by Wisconsin. It's, what has Luke Fickell learned? Is Fickell a better coach in year 3 than he was in year 1 and year 2? Yeah, I think he will be. I mean, we'll see. It's proven, but it's a proven year for him. He's going to be better. I think he can. And that is a podcast we can have just on that subject. Well, the overarching point is simply this. If you have written Wisconsin Badgers off for 2025, already sight unseen, they're going to be at the bottom of the Big Ten. They're going to stink. They're going to get their just reserves for being good for so long. It's finally time for them to step aside and be crappy. You might be sorely disappointed this fall. And I sure as hell hope you are. Scary Alvarez is out.